Okay, recording this video after close of trade Wednesday, 8th of December 2010, and I've not done a video since last week because I've been traveling. Actually down in Spain now, having spent the last 3 months in France, and here for about 5 weeks. So different speed of internet connection, nowhere near as fast as France, and so let's see how things go. Anyway, very important day today. See all kinds of change in trend patterns developing, kind of topping out patterns, so very significant day for me. I'm just going to run through my charts and show you what I'm looking at. First of all, this is the daily chart of the E-mini here, and I was warning about this on Friday, the last post I put up, saying I was looking for an end of trend warning signal that was going to come up. I actually thought it would be on Tuesday, Wednesday, and it turns out it was. So we've now had kind of the completion of this move on a daily time frame from the beginning of this uptrending move back before September, breaking into an uptrend we had over the last week and a bit. We had that kind of a low formed, which was a pullback in an uptrend, and we've now reached this kind of final end of trend warning signal here. So you can just see that partially printed on the top of this chart here. End of trend warning signal coinciding with this cyclical turning point here. So for me that's very important. Now what normally happens, this is a warning signal. It's not a definitive end of trend or anything like that. It's warning me that there could be a change in trend. Now a couple of things happen from here. If everything kind of works out, you start to see some kind of topping pattern, which is usually a little bit of cyclical activity before a final kind of very weak top and then a reversal of trend, if that's is how this is going to play out. If we kind of push through this level over the next couple of days kind of strongly up into the 1230, 1235 type levels and kind of keep going, then the warning signal is kind of negated in that case. But so I'm going to be watching very closely. But I see a lot of things happening in different markets that are saying this is an important time to be looking at these things. So that's on a daily chart. Just looking at some other bits and pieces. So the highest time frame tip bar chart, this is the 40,500 tip bar chart, which is a couple of time frames down from the daily time frame. It's equivalent to about a 45 minute type time frame, and we're coming up to an end of trend warning signal tomorrow. The charts will all reset. We've got kind of rollover day and so on, so this is why kind of the after hours little bar here is a little bit wrong. I suppose the only thing that doesn't look right for me in terms of a topping activity on this chart is that yesterday, kind of moving into this cyclical support level, pullback and an uptrend, our kind of professional bars were on the downside, and we didn't have kind of professional bars on the upside, coming back into 1230, testing 1230 today. So have to wait and see how tomorrow plays out. But in terms of buying activity, we've had kind of weaker and weaker buying coming into these testing of the 1220, 1230 level here, all these bearish divergence patterns, and then this last kind of push back up at this kind of level of buying here on better momentum is showing a kind of a last kind of exhaustive type push, and we weren't able to make up to kind of break to new highs with this kind of level of activity. So I'm going to be looking for tomorrow morning to see kind of what happens coming into midday and so on, whether we get a final kind of flushing out of the buyers and some kind of professional activity at the top. So better X trend. So again, this is a volume based trailing stop that I've not released, but I keep on kind of tempting people with eventually I'll do something with this. But anyway, just to show you over the last few days, this last kind of break up to new highs here has enabled this trailing stop to be pulled back up. So it's now sitting at 1206. So that for me, this 1200 kind of 1206 level is very significant. We get a closing day below 1206, that'll signal a change in trend here. So we're still kind of pulling this trailing stop up behind us. So let's see what kind of tomorrow's activity kind of looks like. And then some interesting things happening on the interest rate charts. Been talking about kind of the collapse in the bond markets, and likely to see a little bit of a change here. And so just showing you on these TN is the 10-year time frame on interest rates here. So we've cracked above 3.2 up to 3.3, but a very weak close today. You can see the closing bar here was very low. So it's like there was a lot of selling into that close to bring that down in terms of the interest rates and so on. So This, interestingly, is an end of trend coming up to an end of trend warning signal. Here we've had our break into an uptrend. I was talking about this over the last couple of months with rising rates, and we've had a pullback in an uptrend, and now we're likely to see an end of trend warning signal, which might signal some kind of high in terms of interest rates going forward. And then you can see similar type patterns on different charts. This is TY, this is a 30-year chart. Again, a pullback. Haven't had a cyclical cross yet. But again, just watch out. This 4.4%, very weak close here. So that was kind of profit taking on the bonds and the interest rate kind of contracts. And slightly different, not a pullback and an end of trend warning signal here on the 5-year, but again, look at this kind of weak close coming in here. So that seemed to be an extreme today. So some kind of topping activity happening there, and you can see that in the bond contracts. So just looking at some multi-markets, here is the 30-year bond contract here, and you can see we've got a cyclical cross happening here. We've had our pullback in a downtrend, so this is the inverse. The bond market will be the inverse of the interest rates, so it's shown you kind of pullbacks in uptrends on the interest rates, and this turns out into a pullback in a downtrend on the bond contracts. And again, kind of a buying off the lows here, cyclical turn happening here. We've had our exhaustion selling on the downside here, coming into new lows, weaker selling at this point. So going to be looking for some kind of bottoming activity for bonds. And then starting to see some topping activity in some of the risk kind of trades. So here's copper, exhaustion buying. We're coming out to a cyclical turning point here. Profit taking yesterday, still kind of broke to new kind of closing high on this chart. So still looking fairly strong, but looking for a top here with an end of trend warning signal on the daily time frame. Crude oil. Crude was less kind of a trending type market over this last kind of 3 or 4 months here, where we've just been kind of batting backwards and forwards between these cyclical highs and lows, kind of making higher cyclical highs and lows. And this last cyclical high has just been printed after today's activity there. And you can see we had our exhaustion buying, we had our flush signal here. We kind of pushed up to $90, but pretty weak buying, and so going to be curious to see how that kind of turns out. Gold we've made after today's activity. You can just see a cyclical dot here, there's a cyclical dot, a white dot on yesterday's activity, and you can see that's a bearish divergence signal on the previous day. And so here we've got an end of trend warning signal, all these blue professional bars, flush signal, really like flush signals that kind of coincide with end of trend warning signals. This is now a second cyclical turn after an end of trend warning signal. We've now closed below 1400, which is a very significant kind of technical point for the gold market. And then we've got a bearish divergence signal here. And then back onto this is the daily chart of the E-mini, just with better momentum on here. So end of trend warning signal here, less buying activity going on. The last push up here above 1200, we had our exhaustion kind of buying activity here. So better momentum is going to signal over the next day or two what in fact that was, but it looks like it's going to be some kind of bearish momentum type signal, maybe a flush signal on this high. Once we get a confirmation, that'll probably be tomorrow or the next day. So again, just be wary, cyclical turning point, end of trend on this time frame. So, and I just thought it'd be interesting. I also track the other FX kind of contracts to see what's going on there, and similar type patterns are appearing on all of these. So just showing you, first of all, this is the Aussie. For the Aussie, the parity number versus the US dollar has been kind of a critical level. So 1 for 1 here on the Aussie dollar was kind of significant resistance, and we had kind of exhaustion buying activity. What I'm interested in looking at in this kind of last move, and you can see this on a few of the FX contracts, coming into this kind of turning point here, we had all of these amateur bars just showing weak buying at this second kind of turning point here. So as we're retesting these highs, we've got kind of weak buying going on with those two yellow amateur bars on a daily chart up at $98 for the Aussie here. And we've had our exhaustion buying, kind of still quite high buying at this point, but we couldn't push back past the parity kind of 1 for 1 dollar here, and we could be starting to roll over. Next chart, Euro chart here, same kind of pattern. We kind of bottomed at 130 and we had all these professional blue bars, and I talked about this the last time I did this chart, with this kind of exhaustion selling at this point. And so we've kind of, because of that exhaustion selling, the market was oversold and it kind of bounced from that level. But coming back into 134, you can see again amateur weak buying at that point here, and better momentum's kind of flicked to the other side, you know, at the same type of levels of buying that we've had before, and we can only just get back up to 134. So that's showing, you know, there's quite a lot of sellers, you know, seemingly coming into the market and not, you know, pushing, allowing the euro to get past 134. So, and this, you know, a bounce off a cyclical turning point. So support becomes resistance as we've broken through this, come back up to test, and it looks like it's kind of appearing to be a resistance level now, support to resistance, and we kind of turned away from that. British pound, similar thing here, you know, kind of broke through cyclical support, now becomes resistance coming into that turning point. Two yellow amateur, you know, kind of weak buying bars coming into the highs here. You know, we're closing a little bit stronger on the euro and the pound here, but you know, as I'm seeing this in lots of different markets, I think this is an important kind of cyclical turning point. Swiss franc here, end of trend warning signal, printed a little bit late, would have been nicer just on top of this bar here after our flush kind of signals coming into these highs. End of trend warning signal, come back in, and then second cyclical turn. You can see a little white dot there just showing the first of the cyclical kind of resistance levels there, so that's important for me, you know, in terms of weaker buying and so on. Japanese yen, again, same type pattern. Exhaustion buying over the last couple of days up into 122, but amateur weak buying up into this level here. We've had our kind of exhaustion selling, whole series of bearish divergence patterns here up at 124, and we've kind of come back down, and we're kind of sitting back at this 118, 119 type level, which is kind of pretty important. So there we go. So just on a whole range of different markets, these kind of turning points are all kind of coming together. So wondering if kind of this last push that I talked about, you know, last week in terms of the risk trade being back on, you know, this is the fifth leg if you talk about kind of Elliott wave type analysis. My pullback and end of trend warning signals, this tends to be, you know, the third leg is the strongest leg in an uptrend, fourth is the pullback, and then fifth is like the final push up to slightly newer highs but on weaker buying and so on. And you can see this in a whole range of different markets. So that's what I'm looking at the moment. So I'm saying, you know, today is an important day in terms of potentially showing that we're seeing a changing character in the market. And so you've got quite high interest rates at the moment and very low bond contracts, and you know, if there's any kind of pullback in terms of the liquidity in the marketplace, if the Fed decides to, you know, to pull liquidity from the market and kind of force a rush back into bonds and interest rates dropping, because that's, you know, kind of what they need in order to get the economy going, is lower rates. Higher rates is not helping, you know, kind of you know, people to leverage up and buy assets and so on. So yeah, there could be some kind of draining of liquidity by the Fed. Interest rates kind of move back down, and all of a sudden the risk trade is back off, and people kind of, you know, go into bonds and, you know, flood back into the US dollar. So just be, you know, wary of a potential change in character in the market over the next couple of days. So I hope your trading is going well. I'm going to be kind of putting my toes back in the water over the next couple of days, having not traded since last week. So hope your trading is going well.